it certainly affects your life more than it should. Yeah, I used to call Saturday night 10:30 death threat hour, because here it comes. Here comes the abuse, and some of it wasn't nice.
You've had death threats, have you?
Oh, I've had mild. It's hard to deal with sometimes, but it's not so much those. It's not so much the abuse. It's more people trying to get you into trouble for something, trying to insinuate you've said something and you meant this by it when you didn't at all. I'd actually like to debunk a myth if I can, because there's a myth on the internet which really winds me up. And I keep getting asked about it, about me and Mark Lawrenson. And in 2010 in South Africa in the World Cup, there's this myth going on that we somehow couldn't hide our disdain for each other and didn't like each other. And it was based around one incident. I call those my frustration years, because I was sort of the new kid on the block. For those years, I didn't get all that many games. 9 times out of 10, I will drive back from a game and I'll be beating myself up and I'll be thinking, oh God, I wish I'd done that better. Oh, that was dreadful. Oh, that was terrible. I shouldn't have done that.
Well, hey there, guys. Welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I'm joined by a special guest today. His name's Guy Mowbray. He's a commentator on BBC's Matchday. Amongst his many achievements, he's the youngest ever television commentator at a World Cup final, aged just 26. Before we get started with the interview, if you are new to our channel, please subscribe to us. We want to grow our channel as much as we can. All your support will really be appreciated. If you want to listen to this interview in audio format, it will be available on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. The links are in the description below. And that's where you also find our social media channels. So, Guy, thanks again for joining us today. Before we get started, how's the lockdown been for you and your family so far?
Yeah, it's gone as well as it could for anybody, I guess. I've quite enjoyed, from a work point of view, going back through the archives and looking at all the old FA Cup and World Cup games. Don't get time throughout the course of a regular season to look back all that often, so that's been quite nice, although I'm desperate to see some live stuff again. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we can all start to get back to some sort of new normality again and start watching some football again from our point of view.
Right, absolutely, yeah, totally agree. So to start with, obviously you've been a commentator for many years, as I was saying in the intro. Been a notable achievements in your career, but did you always want to be a commentator growing up?
Not really, or certainly not consciously. I guess I wanted to be a footballer. That's what everybody wanted to be who was interested, and that would still hold true today. If I could swap it all for one season playing for York City, I think I'd probably do it. But unfortunately, that ship sailed a long time ago. It was never going to happen, so it's the next best thing. My parents actually used to say to me that first instinct is a big deal in somebody's development, and our house used to back onto a playing field where local games played, and allegedly I used to sit in my bedroom window watching the game and I'd commentate on it, saying one team was throwing one out. What if they were playing in black and white stripes? One team was Newcastle, the other team was Liverpool, and I'd have Kevin Keegan playing and I'd have Graham Souness playing and all that, and sort of do commentaries. Apparently, I don't have a great memory of it. The other thing is the youngest commentator at a World Cup final. That's something that's on the internet. I'm not sure how on earth that came about and how on earth it would be verified. Because I don't suppose anybody's asked every network throughout the world, and I don't suppose to keep records either. So I think that's just a little bit of a myth.
Well, it was on your agent's website, so I assumed it was bona fide. Right. Well, we asked our followers on Facebook and Twitter for any questions, and we got one from Twitter. At Bad Jokes Gaming is a football manager. He's got his own YouTube channel. He asked, "How did you get started as a commentator? How did your career start? And have you got any advice for anyone who wants to get started?" Just a two-parter.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong way to get involved, apart from it has to be your absolute passion and hobby and everything going. And football was my absolute life growing up. I played cricket as well and played golf and stuff like that, and still do. But football was my number one thing, and I don't suppose I had many other interests, and don't to this day, quite frankly. So I always knew I wanted to get involved in some way. And these days you can do media courses, you can do sports business studies, all sorts of degrees and all that, which is probably what you need as a stepping stone now, as a starting point. They didn't exist when I was that sort of age. So I basically wrote letters and tried to get in as much as I could. I had a bit of experience of playing to a relatively decent youth level, so I knew a few people around the scene, and just wrote letters and tried to knock on doors and tried to get my foot in the door. And once you do get your foot in the door, the biggest bit of advice I would give for somebody is just never say no to anything. For the first couple of years, I worked basically unpaid, just for a bit of expenses money every now and again, covering games for the old Club Call network before the internet existed. Every club had its own Club Call line. And I used to cover games for them in addition to having a regular sort of 9 to 5 Monday to Friday job. So it was just an unpaid thing at a weekend, a hobby. And if you do say no, from there, you sort of opportunities come. Local radio might ask you to cover a game for them. And my rule of thumb, and I still go with it now, is don't turn it down when something's offered to you, because if you say no, somebody else will say yes. And if they're good, that door might then be closed to you forever. So even if it's unpaid, as you're starting out, do it and get miles on the clock and get experience. And that's the only way you can start to climb.
Okay, great. Now, good advice there. So after Club Call, did you get in to BBC local radio, was it?
It was independent local radio. I worked for a few independent stations, some just ad hoc on a Saturday, things like Viking FM from Hull. And then I got a chance. My first full-time job in radio was at Minster FM in York, which was covering York City and a little bit of Leeds United, but mainly York City back then. And they had sister stations in Scarborough, Yorkshire Coast Radio, and in Sunderland, what is now Sun FM. Our name wasn't quite as snappy as that then. It was quite a mouthful. But that's how my link with Sunderland came about. I started working for them. We started doing matchday commentary every weekend. So, it was independent local radio I started with. Went from there to Metro Radio in the Northeast, which is a big player. Whilst I was there, I also worked for Eurosport. That's where television started. From Eurosport to ITV, from ITV to BBC, and then the other opportunities that have come about since then. I think I've worked for about 6 different networks this season alone.
Good stuff. So what was it? What were the main things that you learned in your early days in radio? Like, what did you learn as a young commentator that's really helped you to the present day?
I think, as I said, it's just gradual miles on the clock. It's almost learning what not to do as much as learning how to do it. Learn what not to say. Brush up on the legal side of things, which most of it is common sense. If you just use your common sense, you'll get by pretty well. It's just how to broadcast, I suppose. Be yourself is the other thing that you've got to. Don't try and be something you're not. Just try and be yourself, and what comes out comes out. So it's just learning gradually as you go. Specific lessons, I don't know. Don't try and be funny. If you are funny, it's a bonus, but don't try. Yeah. If you can entertain people, that's an added extra. And the only other thing I learned really is just try and be respectful to everybody. Be nice to people on the way up, because you never know who you might meet on the way down.
Well said. So when you were growing up, and obviously when you first got started, were there any commentators when you were watching football games or listening on the radio that you really sort of admired?
Same as anybody else, because back then in the 80s and late 70s and 80s, there were only a handful of commentators that anybody ever heard. We're a lot more dilute now. We could never be the stars of yesteryear, because there's just so many of us doing so many games. But back then, when there weren't that many live games on, you had John Motson, Barry Davis, Brian Moore, and then the guys who did the regional stuff. Where I grew up, we had Martin Tyler, we had Roger Thames, and various other people around the country. So there weren't that many on TV. So they're just the voices I grew up with. So naturally, you do look up to them, because they are the voices of your youth. They are football commentary. When I hear a commentary now, I don't hear it in my head. I don't hear it in my voice. I still hear it in one of their voices. Clive Tilsley would be another one as well, who when I was a teenager, I used to hear a lot, and now very, very proud to work alongside him regularly. And on the radio as well. You know, my formative years of football, I remember the old crackly, laid in the bath on a midweek night listening to Radio 2 live from a European game in far-flung Eastern Europe, and it would be the late, great Peter Jones down a crackly line, which made it so much more exotic. I think technology's actually gone too far sometimes. I quite like a poor quality phone line commentary. It just makes it that little bit more out of reach.
Bit of magic.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So, as you say, you moved on to Eurosport. Obviously, apart from like the World Cup in '98, which we'll touch on, what sort of games were you? Did they do Premier League games, or was it just
No. There were various European competitions. There was a fair bit of women's football, international World Cups, things like that. There were Cup Winners' Cup games. There were domestic cup games from the French League, the Spanish League. I did the Spanish Cup final for them one year. We had a roundup show every Monday, which people will... It is much missed, and certainly much missed by me. Euro goals on a Monday night was essential viewing. It was a brilliant programme, and it was repeated throughout the week. And you basically get a roundup of all the goals and very brief highlights from the Belgian League, the Dutch League. There was a spell where we had the Portuguese League. There were loads of others. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but 5 or 6 different leagues and all the action. And that was a great grounding and a great education, because you learned about so many players doing that. So Euro goals was a big thing. International games as well. World Cup, European qualifiers, all of those. So, yeah, there was always something. A lot of youth tournaments. That was the other thing as well, which Eurosport, I don't know if they still do. I think they do, but they have a lot of youth football on them. 21 tournaments, the Toulon tournament, under-17 World Cups, things like that. And they were great. They were great to do. The African Cup of Nations was another one as well. So, yeah, there was a whole great big kaleidoscope of football, which was great for your development, because you were learning so much about football from all over the world.
I can imagine. Okay, thanks. So, we'll get on to the World Cup now, '98. Obviously, you mentioned that now games you've covered. Did the tournament games in particular, like the youth tournaments, etc., did that really prepare you for the biggest competition of all, or is it completely different kettle of fish?
No, I guess it did. The rhythm of a tournament, the way you go from group stage to last 16 to quarters, and that the way that the rhythm of a tournament grows, yeah, certainly, and the work ethic as well, the volume of games, the way that they come thick and fast. My first World Cup in '98, for example, I think for the group phase, I pretty much did a game a day, which when you're 26, you can do easily. You're not worried about the travel so much. It's just easy. I don't think I did every day, but pretty much every day I did a game throughout the group stage. And you do that when you're doing, say, the Youth World Cup off tube from the studio in Paris. You'd maybe be there for 5 days stretch, and you'd do a game every day. So you get used to that rhythm and the prep that entails as well, and how to do it. So it all helps. Every little bit of knowledge in the bank and experience on the clock, it all helps to get to where you want to go.
Absolutely. So I was going to ask, obviously you just mentioned you commentated a lot during that tournament, but in between games, is it a lot of it just focused on your stats and your preparation? Like, do you get a chance to actually go to the cities that you...
No, only to have something to eat and to find a bar to watch the other games in. That's kind of it. That's the rhythm of a World Cup and a major tournament. You've got your grounding, you've got your basic notes done before you set off. You've done those in the weeks and months leading up. In fact, I'm actually, during this lockdown, I'm doing some prep for Euro 2021, as it's now going to be. Yeah. I was going to do it anyway for this summer, so I thought, well, you know what? I've got no other games to prep for. I might as well start doing a bit now, and at least it's there, and I can then go back to it and add to it later. So, and it'll need updating, obviously, as we go on. But yeah, it's a constant thing, is the preparation. It never ends. You're always adding to it. It's a constant job. And that's what it's like at the tournament. You take your basic stuff with you that you've done already, but then, yeah, in between games, you're adding to it in preparation for the next game, and also watching all the other games that are going on as well. It's the hardest you work in this job, but it's also the most fun you have. It's absolutely great. It's a whirlwind 5 to 6 weeks wherever you might be in the world. And yeah, you don't exactly do a lot of sightseeing. I went to Brazil 2 years running, 2013 Confederations Cup and 2014 World Cup. I must have been in Rio, probably, if you added it all up, probably 3.5, 4 weeks in total in Rio.
Yeah.
Never saw the big statue, Christ the Redeemer, never got up there. didn't get a chance. I'm the only person who spent all that time in Rio and not seen the biggest, well, people say the biggest tourist attraction there. I did see the biggest tourist attraction there because I sat in the Maracanã a few times, so that'll do me.
Yeah.
And actually, I could see Christ the Redeemer from my seat in the Maracanã, so technically ticked it off.
At least you technically saw it, just not up close.
Yeah.
So in that tournament in '98, who were your main like sunrisers and co-commentators during that tournament?
Oh, back then, I had Jerry Armstrong, who I was then reunited with Euro 2016 for the BBC doing Northern Ireland games. So yeah, Jerry was great. I'm trying to remember, it's so far back now. Trevor Stephen was a regular with me, and we did the final together, the France-Brazil game. Brian Robson, who was out there as manager of Middlesbrough at the time, just finished his playing days. Who else did I work with? I don't want to leave anybody out. There are lots of people. Guy Mowbray did a couple of games with me. Was that 98?
Yeah.
It was around that time, yeah. Jan, who was also doing it for our Danish language service. It was an interesting tournament for Eurosport because a lot of other countries didn't have the culture of a co-com. Germany, for example, being one. They wouldn't have a co-com in their regular league seasons. So they threw co-coms in for every language that they were delivering the service in, which was chiefly, the main ones were English, German, French and Dutch. And so we had the likes of Andries Bremer was co-com for my German colleagues. Johnny Rep did quite a bit for the Dutch. So I would see these guys and we'd hang around and we'd have something to eat in an evening and what have you. And that was quite an education for me, being around legends. 8 years earlier, Andries Bremer had made me cry by, playing for Germany against England in the World Cup. And now here I am buying him a pint of Guinness in an Irish bar in Paris. So that was great to be around legends like that. And another one I should mention, who was brilliant and a real influence on me, and the loveliest man ever as well, the late, great Billy McNeil, who was one of my regular co-coms for a few years on Eurosport. And just the education in football that he gave me over those few years was just, just forever in his debt.
Fantastic. So we've got another question now from one of our Twitter followers, from Ron Gandalfo, at Ron Gandalfo. He asked about the World Cup final in '98. Obviously, being such a young man at the time, did you prepare any differently compared to any other game? Was you nervous, excited?
I think obviously excited and obviously a little bit nervous, but no, I think it was the naivety of youth. It was just, I thought that was going to happen every year, every 4 years. Oh, great, here we go. This is what happens at a major tournament. So you'd done so many games in the tournament up to then. It was, sounds a cliche, doesn't it? But it was another game. Here we go. Been to that stadium several times, been in full houses there. So that wasn't so much of a problem. I remember getting a little bit emotional about 2 hours before kickoff, made a few phone calls to friends thinking, I can't believe where I am. But then it was down to work. And the mind was certainly focused because it was the famous incident with Ronaldo. Does he start? Doesn't he start? Yeah. I've still got a team sheet somewhere. I can't find it. I wish I could, but I've still got the original team sheet that had Edmundo starting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've still got that somewhere. But
that costs quite a bit if you ever sold it.
Yeah,
you want to keep it.
I want to keep it. I don't know where it is. I'm just looking up at my collection that I've got. I can see the Germany-Argentina World Cup final team sheet from 2014, but I don't know where the 1998 one is. So yeah, that was that focused the mind a bit, because then there was work to do and stuff to find out. And then of course he did play, or sort of did. He was there in body, but didn't do a great deal and was a bit all over the place. And we had the other great story I have from that one is, that's a great story for me anyway, was sitting right behind us for Brazilian TV was Pelé, sitting in the seat directly behind me for the game. So that was quite nice.
Either late that year or the year after, you moved to ITV, and doing a lot of Champions League games at the time. And then I think it was in 2001. I think it was. ITV bought the rights for the Premier League highlights. That must have been exciting to commentate on English football.
Yeah, it was. I call those my frustration years in a way, because I'd sort of done quite well at Eurosport, and it was all a bit of a ride, and it was all just going so well. And then ITV said, "Come and work for us," and so I left my job at Metro Radio, which I had at the same time as Eurosport. I was doing both jobs at once, and went full time with ITV. And then, because I was sort of the new kid on the block for those years, I didn't get all that many games. I'd sort of I'd do one game every sort of 3 or 4 weeks for the Premier League, for the Premiership on ITV as it was at the time.
Yeah.
And the other 3 Saturdays out of every 4, I would be down in the studio, and I would do the extra game. The one that, this was before, in 2004, when Matchday regained the rights, and that was when they started sending cameras to every single game. So, the whole running order debate started with what's going to be on first, etc., etc. And a lot of people have grown up only ever knowing that, Saturday night you do see every game. In the old days, there'd only be full camera coverage at 3 games. And those 3 games would be on come what may, even if all 3 were 0-0. But then they'd have sort of single camera coverage or 2 cameras at a few of the other games. And so if there was one that finished 2-1 or 3-2 or the best of the rest, they would have me do the commentary on that one afterwards, which doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
You don't do spoof comms anymore, but that was a different sort of skill, and I didn't really enjoy doing that. But everything happens for a reason, and those 5 years at ITV and those 3 years of the Premiership in particular stood me in really good stead, because I learned so much listening to the other guys, and I learned how to commentate maybe in a slightly different style when it's going to be edited down, and how to actually edit a game myself. I got involved in that a little bit. I was actually involved in cutting the games as well. So all skills that stand you in good stead. So I call them my frustration years because I wanted to do more, but it was all vital education as well.
At least you learned from there. Was the Premiership, was that one where they started with an early slot time around 7 o'clock?
Yeah, they tried it for a while. Yeah, they tried it for a while to see if it would work, and it didn't really work. I think there was a quote at the time saying, well, we know who has the remote control in households across Britain at that time of night then. I think over the years of Match of the Day being, 10, half 10 over so many years, I think it's just in the British psyche, and that's been proved since it returned as well. So, yeah, it was a very short-lived. People seem to think that happened for a while, but I don't think I don't know if it happened for more than 8 or 9 programs, if that they started at 7. It was a very short-lived experiment, that.
Okay. So obviously, then you left ITV, moved to BBC. Obviously, that's one of the companies that you work for now, and that must have been exciting. Obviously, they got the rights, as you said, back in 2004, I think it was. That must have been a real excitement for you to, commentate every game, and obviously you as one of the league commentators go to the sort of so-called bigger games now.
Well, yeah, to be at a Premier League ground, at least once a week, and usually twice and sometimes 3 times. That's still a privilege to this day. So, yeah, absolutely, and just to be a part of that program, and for you to be a part of, that music comes on, and then you're coming on shortly after it. That's still quite a big thrill. So yeah, to be involved in such an iconic program is fantastic. I still think it is the flagship football show, and long may that continue to be the case.
Awesome. Now, I was reading up, just doing some research, and I forgot actually that how long the BBC didn't have the FA Cup final. They didn't host it. I think it was ITV that hosted it for a while, and then I think your first FA Cup final was in 2015. The final between Arsenal and Aston Villa, which Arsenal easily won 4-0. Obviously, you commentate World Cups, European Championship finals, etc. But especially as a kid, as you mentioned earlier, the FA Cup, one of the rare games that was on during the season. Is that the final against Arsenal Villa? Was that final a particular highlight of your career?
Yeah, Yeah, because that was my first FA Cup final for the BBC. My first FA Cup final was 2011, Man City against Stoke, Yaya Toure 1-0, which I did for the overseas feed. So for all viewers watching the game outside the UK, and I did that game. So that was my personal massive FA Cup highlight. But then to be able to do the final for the BBC and to do it a few times since, there's only a few people have done that. So that was a really nice thing to do, and it's still the highlight of any domestic football season. We're very fortunate and privileged to go to every Premier League game week in, week out. But to me, the FA Cup final is still the absolute pinnacle of our season. I know some people, because they've not grown up with it having the status it used to have, don't quite view it the same. But I certainly still do. And I've noticed over the last few years, the Cup final itself in particular has just been given a little bit more prominence again and somewhere back to near its rightful place.
I was going to ask about the FA Cup actually. Do you think like the FA or the Premier League and fixtures and so on, like should they, what can be done to sort of, that people say, the magic or the cup's been lost? Do you agree with that, or is there something they can do?
I don't know if there's much they can do. I know it'll never take prominence because it's come down to money like anything else does, but there is still a magic there. I thought this season, actually, we were having a classic FA Cup season until everything got stopped. I was at Shrewsbury for the Shrewsbury-Liverpool game, the 2-2 draw.
Oh, that was brilliant, that was,
yeah, and you know what a day to be involved in. What a wonderful day around the excitement around the town of Shrewsbury, right from the moment you woke up all the way through to after the game and then carrying them up to Anfield for a replay. That is what it's about. As somebody who grew up supporting York City, a similar sort of size club, and memories of playing Liverpool and playing Arsenal in the FA Cup, that brought back so many childhood memories for me. And it sums up just how special it still is. I was looking forward to a quarter-final between Newcastle and Manchester City when everything got stopped.
That would have been a good one,
Yeah, it really would have been. That would have been a packed St James's Park. Obviously, that's never going to happen now, which is obviously it's a shame. I know there are more important things, but a real shame. But I thought we were actually having a really good FA Cup season this year.
Yeah, there's been I think there's been too much sort of negativity about prize money. So it's never been about prize money. It's a trophy at the end of the day. And there's been other games like Bradford beating a full strength Chelsea team 4-2. I think it was a few seasons ago. And there's still, it sort of surprised me how there's meant to be a shock in every game. Well, it wouldn't be magical if that was the case.
Absolutely.
I don't quite understand it.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. And it is those rare shocks that make them fantastic. But it's not just the shocks. It's the when you get the big boys away to the smaller clubs, the way that those clubs come alive and really embrace their days in the sun. And that should never be taken away from clubs in the lower echelons. It's what they absolutely thrive on. I don't think the FA Cup's in any imminent danger, although we don't know what the structure of football is going to look like after all this. Some things may have to tweak and be changed, but 'twas ever thus. Things are never staying the same forever.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't know if you commentate on many of these games, but I feel similar about the League Cup as well, where I think that's been sort of derived for no reason. It's still a good trophy, and you see all the competition where it's still the big clubs that win it.
Yeah, it is, and the closer you get to Wembley in the final, the stronger the lineups tend to be. I don't actually mind, selfish hat on, I don't mind the early stages when some of the big clubs are playing some of their kids, because it's a great opportunity to get to know them and find out a little bit about these names, and you can monitor how they go in the future. So I don't mind that. I think actually it should be made a bit more of a selling point of the League Cup. Not the FA Cup. I wouldn't go that far with the FA Cup. I think that should be something extra special. But with the League Cup, I think it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So just go some general questions really about commentating now. So you talked about preparation earlier for a match. I mean, I'm sure you get asked this a heck of a lot, and other commentators do. But in general, what kind of preparation do you do before any game, really? Is it about the lineups, their previous form? Is it a combination of a lot of things?
It's I'd have to show you if I could. It's an awful lot of things. It never ends. It doesn't actually end. The process is non-stop. I'm just trying to think. I've got my computer here. If I could try and show you the sort of things that we do for every game. Where are we? Let me just pick one. So here we are. This was Newcastle against Burnley at the end of February. So I'll see if you can see this. This is the sort of the BBC homepages up there, and they're the sort of, you got that?
Yeah.
A little bit higher, is that it?
A lot of words.
Yeah, there's a lot of words. There's a lot goes into it, basically. And it's constant. Then you have your team sheet, which you look at, which again is like that, but a lot more words of players who might be involved and what have you. And there's a hell of a lot of detail about every single player. And you do that sort of thing for every match. So it doesn't stop. So if for example, if it had been a normal season, I would get my schedule for April at the beginning of April, and I'd probably be prepping all those games at once, not just the ones that's coming up immediately. I'd be doing a little bit for the ones further down the line as well. So, and then once you're onto that, there's a whole new batch of games. So, yeah, it keeps you very, very busy, put it that way. There's some people still think that we commentators just turn up to a game, do 2 hours and go home. You're pretty much working 7 days a week, but I say working in inverted commas because it's a hobby. You might do a lot of it anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's the stuff like exactly we do. Like obviously we record videos for our channel, but we don't just turn the camera on and that's it. We do a lot of prep behind the scenes, and it makes the videos better as well. And I'm sure it obviously makes you commentate better.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to do it. It gives you a level to start from. It gives you the confidence that you know at least what you're talking about. You've got a level of knowledge invested in the game, so it makes the games better as well. Because even if it's what many would perceive to be an awful game, you should be able to find something of interest to try and bring it along and keep it interesting for people. So I don't see too many bad games as a result of doing all that. You've got a level of emotional and actual time investment in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got another question now. This is on my Facebook page. Is from Dean Mears, a friend of the channel. Thanks for your question, Dean. So he's asked, when commentating on the game, does Guy have a predetermined narrative he wants to communicate, or does it always follow the emotional flow of the game?
Yeah, the latter. Absolutely the latter. The only predetermined thing that you will have, and by predetermined I mean half an hour before kickoff, is once you got the team news and you will get a rough idea and jot down some notes of what to say as the teams come out. Basically, your opening line before the game starts and how you're going to get the team news across to people. That's it. Otherwise, no, there's no. You'll have a line in your head for kickoff, and you'll have an idea of how it should go, just like anybody else will. You might think, oh, they should win today, or I think it's going to be an away win today, or whatever. But it's not a narrative as such. You just go with the emotional, the flow of it from that point. Now, as we know in this game, never predetermine anything because you don't know what's going to happen, and that's the absolute beauty of it. You can be seeing the worst 0-0 in the world ever, but then something will happen with the last kick that, in some cases, changes your life. It certainly can change your day and change how you feel, and make the day memorable when otherwise it might have been just completely run-of-the-mill. The classic example of that would be 2012 Sergio Aguero. That moment.
I was going to ask, actually, yeah.
Well, that's the moment. 2 goals in injury time. Look at the stats from that game. And prior to that game, Queen's Park Rangers, who, let's face it, were on the brink of going down, had conceded fewest goals in the final 10 minutes of Premier League games of any club all season. Really? I think they'd conceded 4 goals in the final 10 minutes of games. That's in 37 games leading up to that last game. They're 2-1 up with 90 minutes gone. And then they concede 2. So 50% again of the goals they conceded in injury time. That just showed you how things can just totally change, literally with the toss of a coin. And that's what makes the game beautiful. And it's why you can never have any sort of predetermined idea of what you're going to say.
Well, on that particular game, City QPR, that's got to be one of the I don't know about the game. The game was pretty decent, but in terms of
it was, yeah.
In terms of career highlights, that's surely got to be up there in terms of the best moments.
In terms of the excitement of the day and what it meant to Manchester City and what it meant to be there, you don't want to be at the other game. You want to be at the game where the story is, and that is undoubtedly where the story was. So yeah, in terms of that, in terms of my commentary, it's not exactly a highlight. I wish I'd done it better. I wish I'd had a line that just came to me, but you can't order these things. No. I wish I'd had a line at that point that just came to me that lived forever, rather than just screaming Aguero with lots of O's. Funnily enough, Martin Tyler was sitting just along from me, and people have come to me at the time, because it's live on Sky and we had it on highlights later. People said to me, "Why did you copy him for the goal?" Well, we did it exactly the same time. That's the point. Yeah. It's live commentary.
You can't fake saying Aguero in the way you did. You can't.
No, you couldn't do it anyway. So no, yeah. It's all. And funnily enough, okay, the words are slightly different, but essentially we did the same commentary. Yeah. It's a strange one, that. It's just the emotion just hits you. I wish I got my words out better, but on the other hand, the emotion just, wow, what have we just seen? Wow. And maybe that's some area I can improve in future as well. I think just maybe not quite get so excited. I don't know. Try and stay a bit more level-headed, but when it comes out like that, you just can't help yourself. You just go. And I'm worried about the day that England win the World Cup, because I think I'd cry my eyes out. You wouldn't be able to hear what I'm saying. I'd be a gibbering wreck, I think, if that ever happens. Sorry, when that happens.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask, actually, so you've touched on it there. Like, do you actually listen to your previous commentaries and try and learn from it? Like, I think I remember listening to Clyde Tilsley saying he always listens, and he's always never happy, but he always thinks something. Well, are you the same?
Yeah. You're never happy. You will notice one tiny blip that nobody else has noticed. You might stutter over a word. You might misidentify a player. Nobody's even noticed that you have. There'll be something. You could never do the perfect commentary ever. It's never been done and never will be done. I think I got to about 10 minutes of a game once, and I hadn't stumbled over any words, and I hadn't misidentified any players, and that's about it. That's as far as you'll go. It's impossible to do, but it's a good challenge to set yourself every match. So I don't listen back. I'll watch back match of the day. It's usually best watched on a Sunday morning rather than a Saturday night. A bit more process in your head that way. I'm a bit like Clive in that respect, in that 9 times out of 10, I will drive back from a game and I'll be beating myself up, and I'll be thinking, "Oh God, I wish I'd done that better. Oh, that was dreadful. Oh, that was terrible. I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I hope that's not in the edit tonight. I got that wrong," or something. Yeah. But then you'll watch it back and you'll go, "Oh, actually, that was all right. I'm pretty happy with that." The one time in 10 that you'll drive home, chuffed to bits for yourself, and think that went well today, you'll put matchday on that night and go, "Oh, that's awful." It always works in reverse. So I've learned that over the years, and it always happens like that.
No, at least you're learning, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So obviously we touched on some memorable games of yours, but what would you say is the best game you've covered in your career? Like the best 90 minutes or 120 minutes?
Again, as I said, because I do that many and I'm on to the next, I've not got a great memory for recall. I don't recall games all that well, because one's gone and you're already looking forward. So I don't look back all that often, to be honest. If I go back into the dim and distant, the playoff final in '98, Sunderland Charlton, the 4-4 drawn penalty shootout.
Was that with the Mendonca hat-trick?
Yeah, Mendonca. Yeah, I prefer to look at it the other way and say, poor old Michael Gray with his penalty.
Yeah. You see on Sky all the time. Especially nowadays where there's no games on that.
I know Mickey Gray really well. He's a great lad. And his legs had just gone at that point. He'd just gone. You could see there's just no life there, just lead at that point. By the way, he's absolutely fit as a fiddle now, just all these years later. But yeah, that's one of the games that had a massive personal and professional impact on me. It helped my career, I suppose, doing that game for Metro Radio as it was at the time. And it was a great game as well. So that's always up there on my list. Other than that, it's more, I see that good games. It's more the occasions rather than the games. So to be at World Cup finals, the World Cup final 2010 in South Africa, Spain winning against the Netherlands when the Dutch just tried to kick them off the field all match. It was 1-0, one goal, Iniesta. Not a great game by any stretch of the imagination, but it is in my head because it was my first World Cup final for the BBC, and that's got a fond place in my heart. And then the last World Cup, I really loved. I was absolutely buzzing after Argentina against France when France won 4-3 with Mbappe just turning on the burners. That was a wonderful game. I mean, Di Maria's goal in that game was absolutely extraordinary, and you just think that is world class. I'm not going to see anything like that again. Same net, second half. Pavard scores one even better. So when you see a game like that, you just that was wonderful.
Good stuff. So I forgot to ask this earlier, but in terms of commentating on big games, well, especially the finals, actually, is it decided before the tournament who's actually going to commentate the final, or is it a case where it's like the referees or something? If you perform well during the tournament, like Howard Webb was the best referee in 2010, he was the final referee. Is it how does it work?
I generally think they have an idea, but it's certainly. I don't know. I don't make those decisions, but I won't generally be told for absolute certain before a tournament. So it's not. If I'm having an absolute shocker all tournament, it doesn't mean I'm going to get it. No. It's like anything else. Everything's got to be performance led, I would say. But they have an idea. I don't know. I'm not in a position to make those calls, so I happily accept what I'm given to do.
Yeah, that's fair enough. This might not apply to you particularly, especially the stadiums you go to now. But have you got any funny stories of where any technology mishaps that have happened? The commentating's gone off and you're not live. And has there been anything?
There's a few. Like yeah, there's a few. Not so much recently. There's always something. I'm trying to think. I remember nearly getting caught short on the gantry at the City Ground, Nottingham once. Nottingham Forest against Wolves. It was a championship as it is now. I was doing the game for Central ITV region, and I'd just come back from a trip to Istanbul from doing Champions League game over there, and I had a particularly dodgy stomach. And about 10 minutes into the second half, I just suddenly felt the levels in my stomach drop. I thought, I'm in trouble here.
Oh,
no. And I'm basically sitting in something that's suspended from the roof, and there's only one way up or down, and it's a long walk, and the game's on, and there's no way I can go anywhere. And yeah, I held on, but I was in absolute agony. And actually, there's similar things that the World Cup final. I don't want to go into too much detail. Actually, it's gross. But the World Cup final in 2018, the last one, the France-Croatia game, I had terrible trouble for the 48 hours leading up to the game, and it was getting to critical point. And a mate of mine who I was working with there, he basically went over the road to the pharmacy and bought the Russian equivalent of Imodium, and was trying to translate the packet. And it's World Cup final morning, and it says, "What does these say?" I think it's the same as at home. Take 2, and then have 1 every sort of couple of hours, but no more than 4 in a day. I said, "Oh, what should I do?" And he went, "It's the World Cup final, mate. Just take all 8." So I did. And it worked. I wouldn't recommend it. It worked. But it was painful. Very. I was in agony. I certainly wouldn't recommend it. But it worked for a few days. A good few days. So, yeah, things like that. Things that you don't think of. But, yeah, a commentator can't nip out and go to the toilet in the middle of a game. So that's quite difficult. Another one, which I'd actually like to debunk a myth if I can, because there's a myth on the internet which really winds me up. I keep getting asked about it, about me and Mark Lawrenson, who is my favourite I've ever worked with and always will be, and he's been the best travel companion I've ever had. And in 2010 in South Africa in the World Cup, there's this myth going on that we somehow couldn't hide our disdain for each other and didn't like each other, and it was based around one incident. And the incident was, I dropped my pen in the course of commentating. I bent down to pick it up like so. In doing so, smacked my head on the edge of the desk that I was sitting behind, which caused Loro to look at me and think, what the hell's he doing? As I lifted my head back up with a start, my knee came up and smacked the underside of the desk. So I'm now in double pain while he's trying to talk and summarise. I'm just sort of bewildered. He's looking at me, and in the course of it, he just said, "Are you all right?" Very deadpan, as he does. And I was trying not to laugh, and he's trying not to laugh, and we're both collapsing into fits. So I just said, "Yes, thanks," through sort of gritted teeth.
I'm remembering it now, yeah.
Now, somehow, somebody interpreted that as, "Oh, listen, they don't get on. Listen to this terse exchange."
Oh, is he joking? It's a great tackle, this by, I think, Xabi Alonso. He wins the ball. What's wrong with that? You're supposed to say nothing.
I am saying nothing.
I'm sorry, Guy. I think Spain need to change. It's powder puff at the moment. You're right.
Fine. Thanks for asking.
And honestly, it was as simple as that. And we were trying not to sort of collapse and trying to stay on air while looking at each other. And it was as simple as that. And some people even went all intellectual and said, "Oh, listen to this. This is very passive aggressive. I've never heard so much crap in my life." Absolute load of rubbish. So yeah, there you go. It was amusing to us, but nobody else. But we couldn't really let on. Maybe we should have done. Maybe I should have just said, "Sorry, I've just smashed my head and my knee on the desk."
I remember David Gower doing something similar during the cricket commentary. I think it was the Ashes a few years ago, where he allowed like yelp like that, and it was Nasser saying put his chair on his foot, something like that. Then he actually said, "Sorry, someone just put a chair on my foot," and then it was the end of his commentary spin. So cricket seems to be more open in terms of.
It's a lot more relaxed. It's a lot more gaps to get those sorts of things in. There've been this happens regularly as well, by the way. When you're up where we are, certainly there's some of the old style gantries that are sort of on the roof or hanging from the roof. Notes being blown off into the crowd are a regular thing. And your heart stops every time it happens. There are these notes I've just shown you, that you spend all week and weeks preparing, and you take them to the games, and you're trying to tape them to the cold metal that's around you or the wooden desk or whatever. You're trying to tape them up so you can see them and still see the monitor on the pitch. And then a gust of wind will come, and just it goes. Oh, your heart just sinks. You could keel over at that point. It's awful. It's happened to me too many times to mention that you just think, right, I really am going off memory here.
Speaking of like gantries and sort of press areas, I was speaking to Paul McCarthy, the former News of the World Sports editor, a few years ago, and he was saying that one of the early games he went to was at, I think it was Port Vale, one of the old school grounds, and to get to the press box, he had to get up a really weak ladder, and it was all shaky.
Oh, there's a lot like that. Yeah.
Have you maybe not at new stadiums, obviously, but have there been any random or hard gantries that you've been?
Yeah, I used to. Yeah, the new stadiums are all pretty much built into the stands. They're not quite so much fun, but the ladder over the top at Everton always used to be one, quite steep going up, quite windy and slippy on the top, and then steep going down. That was always one that was fun. It's a little bit safer now. Selhurst Park was one where you were practically on your hands and knees. The gantry got closer and closer. The sort of walkway from the end of the stand to the middle where your thing was hanging down, it got narrower and narrower, and you couldn't stand up. So you're sort of crawling down, and eventually you would almost have to crawl to get on it. The old one at St Andrews at Birmingham City, where you'd get up there, and it was actually a gantry hanging from the roof, and there was no permanent ladder there. So it was an old wooden ladder that just get propped up. And once you were up, they'd make sure, is everybody up now? Yeah, that's it. The ladder's taken away. So you aren't getting down. I'm not sure how that would pass fire and safety these days, but you weren't getting down once that ladder was taken away. So there's a few that I used to prefer those old precarious ones. I once did a game at Hartlepool actually, and Hartlepool didn't have that many live football matches on. And it was a League Cup tie at the start of a season, maybe 2001, 2002 it might have been, I can't remember totally, but it was Hartlepool against Nottingham Forest, and my hastily rigged sort of shelter, bit of scaffold on the roof of the stand with my back to the North Sea, and two sort of just normal sort of dining room chairs were provided for myself and my co-commentator to sit on and to perch our notes on our knees. And throughout the course of the first half, I can feel something stuck under my chair, and I'm sort of digging at it with my foot. I'm kicking it around, thinking, "What is that? There's something there." And at half time, when I looked down, there was a dead seagull that I just been kicking about for 45 minutes.
Oh, it's a co-commentator.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't contribute much.
In terms of, I can imagine obviously there's been exciting games, but I imagine there's been some, less exciting games. Is it hard to stay motivated, to stay concentrated when you're watching some 0-0 games with no chances?
Not really, because I said about, you don't know what's going to happen when. It can all happen very quickly. In fact, if you start to do that, you start to sort of mess about or glance around or look down and not particularly interested, that's when something will happen that will catch you out. So you do have to stay focused on the game. And there's always something happening. Even in the worst game, there'll always be something that you can look back on and take from it. So you've done all the notes as well. So there's always something to draw on. I'd say I don't really see terrible games. Not how other people might see them.
Yeah, that's good to know. Obviously, you've watched a number of games over the years. Relegation sides against top of the league, etc. Giant killings and cup competitions. Have there been any games that have sort of really surprised you, where like, let's say, like a team in bad form that have been the top of the division, or a giant, giant cup killing, or two sides where you think, well, there's nothing to play for, but it's been really exciting and one of the best games in the city. Has there been any? I imagine there's been a lot of games like that.
Yeah, there's a load like that. I was talking earlier about Shrewsbury Liverpool, and when you get the underdog suddenly put in a performance like that. There's a few over the course of a season. You'll see the team at the bottom beat one of the big boys at the top, and that's always a story. I remember last season, Crystal Palace going to Manchester City, winning 3-2 with Andros Townsend scoring an absolute belter. Yeah. And nobody saw that coming. City had been unbeaten at the Etihad for goodness knows how long. Palace's away form, I think, was rotten, or was it? I can't remember off the top of my head. But what a game that was, and nobody saw that coming. That was just one that really was a bolt from the blue. So that's an example of you don't know when you go. And actually, you can do it by the reverse side of the coin, which is too often the blockbusters that are hailed as, you must watch this, do not miss it. It's super Sunday, and they turn out to be rubbish. There's too much expectation on them. So I try and stay level-headed and have the same sort of level of expectation for every game. For the reasons I've outlined, you don't know where the good ones are going to be.
Good stuff. No, I imagine you get asked this quite a lot, but who would you say has been the best player that you've seen live?
My favourite, and for me the best, is Zinedine Zidane. I just used to love watching him play. He did things for a guy who's he's a thick-set, well-built, tall guy, but he almost had the poise of a ballet dancer. His balance and his tricks, and he used to do things on the ball that I only ever saw, apart from him, do it on FIFA, on a games console. Yeah. Some of the drag backs and flicks, and the way he used to turn and suddenly find space. So for me, watching Zidane would be, I guess, for somebody a bit older than me, it would have been like watching Cruyff. I absolutely adored watching him play. Messi, I've been a little bit unlucky, because I admit that he's probably the greatest around, but bar one or two games for Argentina, I've never seen him have an absolutely outstanding game in the flesh. Most of the games of Barcelona that I've covered over the last few years have been from a studio in London. So I've not actually been there in the flesh. So I don't really count those. So I've seen Ronaldo have a fair few good ones. I don't actually subscribe to the best player in the world idea myself, though. I don't like it as a thing. I know it's all razzmatazz and that, and all Ballon d'Or and everything, but to me, it's a team game. And Messi might be the finest footballer on the planet, but put him at centre back and see how he does. It's a team. To me, it's a team game. It's not keepy uppies. It's not freestyle. So I don't really go with that. But I'm happy to concede that those two in particular would be the best two in the world.
Good stuff. And obviously, now you mentioned earlier that you might not sort of recall old games and stuff, but is there any particular line or a couple of sentences that you said during the commentary that you're really proud of?
But not. It sounds terrible. I'm doing myself down. Not really. I don't remember them, and maybe that's my problem. I'm not doing enough memorable ones, but I don't pre-script them, so I don't remember them. I don't really. I guess the big games that I look back and think, oh, I did that one okay. They've played a couple in recent weeks, actually. I didn't make too many mistakes in the France-Argentina game at the World Cup. And last season, I was pretty happy with Wolves-Watford in the FA Cup, the semi-final, which went pretty well.
Yeah.
But I've only just watched them back in recent weeks, so they're quite fresh in the memory. But I don't. To me, it's all about the games. It's not about. It's more to me, as long as I've added something and I haven't cocked it up and ruined it for somebody, which I always will for somebody. It's the nature of the job, unfortunately. Not trying to, but some people just decide they don't like you. So I can't do a lot about that. But I'm not trying to get on people's nerves. But it's about the games. It's not about what I said in them. Even people say, "Oh, what a brilliant goal call that was." Well, it's nothing. It means it was a brilliant goal. That's what we should be looking at.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So it's not something I particularly look back on.
No, that's fair enough. And obviously, majority of commentaries you do now are on TV, but back in the day it was mainly more radio. So what's the difference for those who may not know? What's the difference commentating on radio and TV?
There's a big difference, to be honest. They are two totally different jobs in a way. Radio, you are more descriptive. You are the eyes of the people that, presumably because they're listening to it, if they could have been at the game, they would have been at the game. So you're providing a service more than anything else. And you've got a little bit more freedom to maybe be yourself a little bit more, be a bit more expressive. And I do miss the radio days for that. You could just get a little bit out there. You can go off at a tangent. You can have a conversation if you like as well, away from it. So it's more conversational. So that's kind of the radio style. For TV, you've got to add something every time. You can't just say what people are seeing. Right now, people say, well, that's all you do. We don't, or we certainly try not to. We try and add something, whether it be a little bit of factual detail, too much in some people's eyes. And I agree, sometimes we do get far too bogged down in that. But a little bit of factual detail, maybe a little bit biographical, maybe a statistic that might help, only if it might help. Don't throw it in for no reason at all. So it's a little bit more nuanced, I would say, television. Radio, I think, is... I don't know how to put it. It's just more relaxed. It's a more user-friendly style. I think television is very easy to get wrong. And also the other thing is as well, on radio, there's a little bit of leeway in that if you do get it wrong, you might get away with it. Whereas on television, if you say the wrong player's name, you're stuffed because people have seen that it ain't him or her.
Yeah. So in terms of football nowadays, because obviously the speed of the game seems to be quicker than it was in, I'm not sure, like in the 80s. And
gets quicker every year, I think.
Has that made commentating harder for you?
Yeah, I think it does, actually. It's not something I think about, but not necessarily for commentators as well. I think it's harder for referees. They've still got just a whistle and a pair of eyes. I know technology is coming into it and we're getting used to how that's being used, but it's pretty much essential now because the pace is so unrelenting. And yes, it's harder in commentary you have to stay so much more focused. There are no breaks in the game. There are no gaps particularly. Hence, we get a lot of criticism for talking too much. But it's almost the natural pace of the game. Everything's got quicker. I think if we did it in the style of the guys in the 80s, we'd get slaughtered for not contributing anything and not doing it properly. And, the commentary matches the era of the football that you're watching. So, yeah, it is. I think you're right. It is harder. But,
certainly
for me, it's no less enjoyable.
just on social media, has obviously you're still commentating, you're not watching, you're not looking at social media, obviously you focus on the game, but as you know, the comments that people say when you're commentating on the game, has social media sort of affected your commentary in any way, or are you just focusing on obviously the match and your prep and stuff?
It wouldn't affect my commentary, no, because you can only do what you do. You can only be yourself, and what comes out comes out. But it certainly affects your life more than it should. On a Saturday night, it's not been so bad lately, but yeah, I used to call Saturday night 10:30 death threat hour, because here it comes. Here comes the abuse, and some of it wasn't nice.
You've had death threats, have you?
Oh, I've had mild. You know, it's only words. You know, it's only people expressing their frustrations.
Yeah,
they're not going to come. They're not going to come round. You know. It's
no, but even so, though, I don't. Yeah, but someone.
No, but people just get frustrated, don't they? They don't. It's like the rule of being a fan, isn't it? You can criticise your team as much as you like, but as soon as somebody else does, that's out of order. So if the commentator's doing it, a link is made, thinking, "Oh, well, they must hate us." Then, no, not at all. That's not the case. So it's hard to deal with sometimes, but it's not so much those, and it's not so much the abuse. It's more people trying to get you into trouble for something, trying to insinuate you've said something and you meant this by it when you didn't at all. They're the ones that I don't like. They're the ones that I sort of take exception to. And everybody's always very wise after the event. Everybody's very, very good about telling you what mistakes you've made and why you should have done this. And that's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of the beast. And sometimes you're thick-skinned and you deal with it, and other times you might be feeling a bit low, and it's just a little bit awful. But oh goodness me, can't cry about that, can I? It's
that's the way of the world, my friend, isn't it?
It is.
So, got another question from one of our Twitter followers, at FM Rasher. He's a football manager gamer. I think he spoke to you a few weeks ago.
All right.
Is Guy still persisting with Tamworth despite a lack of funding, or has he moved on to pastures new?
No, I am still the manager of Tamworth in Football Manager in my game. The long story for those who don't know is I took charge of my team, York City, in National League North, and I led them to third place in the table with about 7 games to go, and they sacked me. Would have comfortably got in a playoff. Yeah, I would have comfortably got in a playoff place, but they had expectations of winning the title, so they sacked me. So then, when you manage a football manager and you start off that low, it's hard to then get another job. Yeah, so I was pressing continue for ages, and not getting any sort of offers, even though I applied for every job going. And then finally, Tamworth offered me it, so I went for it. And in my first season, their only wish was to avoid relegation, and I got them to the playoffs. And only lost in the second playoff semi-final, 1 match away from the final. And I got knocked out. So I applied for another couple of jobs, didn't get them. So I thought, oh, well, let's crack on. And I'm currently nearing the end of my 3rd season in the game. So my 2nd season in charge of Tamworth. And we're a point away from a playoff place, or 3 points away, with about, again, 6 or 7 games to go. But I've been trying to... I've seen the writing on the wall. There's not a lot of money still. It's a part-time team. So I'm going to have, if we don't go up, have you heard me? If it gets very real. If I don't manage to get promotion this time, I'm going to apply for other jobs or just resign, because I can't do any more with them, I'm afraid. I've done it, and if I have to press reboot and I have to start a new game with somebody else, that's what I'll have to do.
Fair enough.
It gets very absorbing. It's not a game I would play if I wasn't in lockdown. In a regular season, I wouldn't even touch it, because it would get very confusing. Real life and the game would mingle too much.
Do you think that game, though, because of the I'm a fan of it as well, and the database and the stats they've got on it. I mean, would that actually help you in terms of any preparation for some unknown players?
Oh, certainly. I'm not sure in terms of actual match preparation. I'll go and load it up and start searching through it. But just through the very nature of playing it, you learn names and you learn who's where, and players in the lower divisions and players at clubs abroad. Yeah, it does help. It just helps stick it in your brain. And yeah, some player will come through. It's happened, hasn't it? Some players come through on Football Manager, and then people have thought, oh, let's have a look at him in real life, and he's actually not all that good, all the other way around.
Yeah.
And I know that database is used actually extensively in the professional game.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful body of work. It's a wonderful feat, actually, that game, to see where it's grown from. I played the original version on the ZX Spectrum years and years ago.
Wow.
It was a very different game then.
Yeah, well, because I spoke to Miles Jacobson a few years ago, and he was saying that Andre Villas-Boas uses it, and obviously a high-profile manager. And I think Everton used the database a few years ago. I don't know if they do now, but it's funny how it's come from a cult following to actually used by clubs. And even if you watch something on Sky Sports News, and they've got a player up who's been signed by someone, they'll have the stats from the game.
Yeah. It does get into real life a little bit, as long as you realise it is just a game, though, essentially.
Absolutely. So the current season, you commentated on Amazon Prime. So the first time that the Premier League coverage is not on any of the traditional TV channels or Sky BT, etc. Do you feel that Amazon Prime and other sort of websites that's the future for live football?
I don't know, to be honest. It was nice to be a part of, and it certainly seemed to work. It was
it did. I'm not just saying that it did. The coverage was really good.
It was a great idea, I thought. Whether it would work across the board, I don't know. I'd hope to be involved in some stage if it carried on like it did last season. I don't know. I think we're heading into a stage now where we don't know what the landscape's going to look like for anybody going forward. Everything's just changed, but it was certainly a good thing to be involved in. The fact that every game was on live in a very condensed period of time, and good to catch up with some old colleagues that I haven't worked with for a few years as well. So I think the model worked. Whether it's a thing for the future, I don't know. I don't know where the authorities want to go with it.
Yeah, well, like anything, we'll see how it goes. So just on the internet and social media and so on, what do you make of fan TV channels like Arsenal fan TV, West Ham fan TV, etc.? What are your opinion on those?
I've honestly never watched any. I read about the Arsenal one in particular seems to get a lot of press coverage, but I've honestly never seen a minute of any one, so I don't really know. I can't really comment on.
What about the concept of it? What about the concept of fan channels and it's alongside phone-in, some radio. It's another sort of
I guess that's what it is, isn't it? It's an extension of the phone-in, which and a natural extension, I suppose, of the message boards, which every club will have. Don't see why not. If there's a market for it, it'll work. If people want to watch it, it'll work. If people don't want to watch it, it won't. That's it. I don't really have any feeling on them, to be honest.
That's fair enough. I mean, it keeps getting bigger and bigger every time we look at their channel. So obviously you support York City. Obviously coming from there, was supporting York an easy choice, or was you tempted to support one of the bigger sides?
Yeah. I have soft spots for a couple of big teams as well. Everybody does when they grow up in York. But the first game I attended was at Bootham Crescent. My dad grew up going there. That's just what you did throughout my teens. I started going to games with my mates on our own. Went to away games as well, and that was just it. It's like anything else; it becomes part of you. And it's a funny team to support, I suppose, because people from outside the city don't realise everybody in this city does support the football club. They don't all go, but they all sort of are aware of the football club and are really proud of it. But we've never really got anywhere, I suppose. The 70s was two seasons in Division 2, and apart from that, that's as high as they've been. And at the moment, we're at the lowest point we've ever been in the club's history. But on the right track. When things stopped, we were top of National League North. So. That's
hope the onwards and upwards.
We think we're a pretty good big team, and it irks me when I say York City. People go, "Oh right, what division are they in?" And I think, how do you not know? To us, I always think of us as quite a big deal. To my mind, we'd be the biggest team outside the Football League and should be in the Football League right now. I mean, they're in the Football League all my life until 2004, and then back in it briefly. So to me, we're not non-league. We're a natural home is sort of League One, League Two, and hopefully one day again.
Fingers crossed for you. So just finally, you're a patron of Sporting Memories, and you're an ambassador for Foundation of Light. That's someone's foundation. I mean, how good does that feel to obviously use your profile to help out those particular causes?
I love that. The Foundation of Light is something that does incredible work in the Northeast, and I spent 5 years of my career working basically with and for Sunderland Football Club, and so that was nice when I was asked to sort of just help get involved in promoting what they do. That's it, really. That's the extent of my role there. But they do amazing work, and the Sporting Memories thing is something I'm really, really proud of. And that's Tony Jameson Allen, who founded the organisation, the charity, and still runs everything to do with it. He got me involved in doing a little bit for them, and then I did a bit, and he very kindly said, well, look, would you be one of our patrons, because we're really happy with what you're doing. And that's something I'm keen to do. I've actually taken it a step further recently through social media, in that I'm trying to get a link to it every single day. So every morning I will get up, and my first job before anything else, I'll check the date. So 6th of May today. And just for a bit of fun, instead of going for the obvious, I've got a little thing on my phone. It's a random number generator, and I go for any year between 1950 and 2018, press the button, and it will come out with any year. I will then go into research mode and find out what happened on this date that year in football, be it a match, and I'll pick a match and find goal scorers from it or whatever, and then publish a photo of them. Sometimes I'll put their names, sometimes I won't, and just get people talking, people reminiscing and talking. So today, it threw up 1953, I believe, and I just had a look, and Graham Souness was born on this day. It's his 67th birthday, the day that we're recording this. So put a picture of Graham Souness up there from his Scotland playing days, and sometimes it'll be players you might never have heard of, sometimes it'll be players a little bit more well known, but that is the essence of what Sporting Memories do. They have networks of support groups for people suffering with Alzheimer's, with dementia, loneliness, maybe who don't get out very often. And there will be many meeting groups near you, somewhere near you, if you know somebody who could do with this. And they go along, and they literally 3-4 hours, they'll have a coffee. There will be an archive of old sporting photos, which just make you beam as soon as you see them. There will be images, and you'll just, wow, look at that for a photo. And then the conversation will start. Say, do you remember seeing them play? And, I'm coming from a football point of view, but it works for other sports as well. And it's amazing that it brings people out of their shells and brings them back to life. There's a story that Tony got me hooked with, which is why I got involved with the charity, which I think is still on the website, called Bill's Story. And this was a guy who was in a nursing home and didn't have any family visiting him, and kind of got a bit lost and was sat in the corner on his own most of the day, not really saying anything, and just a bit in his shell. And then one day somebody was talking about football, and they showed a picture of, now then, it was either Sir Matt Busby or Bill Shankly, or maybe both. And it was a Scotland lineup with them in it. And he said, oh, yeah, I played with those two. What are you talking about, Bill? And then when they got this picture, there he is. Bill played for Scotland during the war years. And he started talking about it. And from that moment, he was brought out of himself. The memories came flooding back. And that's what Sporting Memories does. We need to get people, be they suffering from dementia or some kind of degenerative disease, be they just lonely, isolated, need support. There will be a group nearby where you can, they have quizzes, they have all sorts. They're brilliant things. They're just joyous occasions to be part of. And very, very, very proud to be part of it myself.
Well, Guy, thanks so much for joining us today at this obviously difficult time for everyone. So I really appreciate your time. That was great. Thanks for watching then, guys. If you are new to our channel, please subscribe to us. We want to grow our channel as much as we can, and all your support will be really appreciated. So if you do like this video, give this video a big thumbs up, and then comment below on your thoughts. And if you want us to interview any other commentators, journalists, ex-players, just put your comments down below, and we'll try and interview those people. And if you want to listen to this back in an audio version, our Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, our links are again, they're in the description below. and also follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. Thanks again to Guy, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.